Yeah.
We are getting there.
I'm taking them away from you.
I see that.
Thank you anyway. Fine.
We are live. Great.
So who watches?
Who watches? We right now 4 people are watching.
Okay.
Really?
Rabbi Shaul told me.
Who?
We'll find it after. If anyone watching wants to write their names in the comments so we could know who you are, that would be great. Also, feel free to ask any questions. I can see
Then we know who we can't
your
talk
comments. Right.
about.
Leave comments or questions here. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to the Cones for opening your home
Thank you.
and your refrigerator. Does everyone have a source sheet? Great. So tonight there are more somewhere. Marty, Michelle will have to.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Oh, great.
They're case-off cookies. They're left over from that.
Okay. So tonight's topic is the bar and bat mitzvah. And as we will see, I hope, this is the continuation, following that soul that came into the world during our very first class. So this is the next stage of life that is celebrated. It could be that there are other things happening along the way also that we did not talk about. We didn't talk about Pidyon Haben. We didn't talk about an Upsharon. We can get back to those at a different time.
If anyone needs the beautiful Pidyon Haben speech,
We
I
got it.
got one from
Okay.
my father-in-law. May rest in peace.
Okay, thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Never know when you need it.
Thank you. Good to know. So the bar mitzvah is a very fascinating topic. Just by show of hands, there's been an interesting development of how we celebrate bar and bar mitzvah nowadays. So could everyone share if you had a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah and how it was celebrated back in the day?
No, but I can talk
No.
about my children.
Okay, so let's if we could go back. Did anyone here celebrate a bar or bat mitzvah?
I celebrated in South Africa.
Okay.
Was
You don't have to tell us what year.
What?
You don't have to tell us what year that was.
oh yeah no
You might remember.
but it was very modest relative to what they do today. But I mean, a lot of people came. It was on Pesach. We had a family seder. All the Rabbinowitzes in the Western Cape came, about 80 people. But we had a lunch. There was also a luncheon after the shul. But the women of the community cooked all the food. It was, I remember them just plucking with their chickens and doing that. It's just very different. There was no disco, no huge party.
And did you do anything in preparation for your bar mitzvah?
Oh yeah, well, in South Africa you had to do an exam.
Really?
Yeah, the rabbi told me I did have Torah. You learned how to daven.
Okay. So just the Haftorah, though.
Just no
you got the Aliyah, you got Maftir, you did the Haftorah.
Yeah, exactly. And you learned do the Friday night service, the part of Shachrit and Musa.
You led services?
Yeah, led services.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
not the whole service, but I think Kabbalat Shabbat. I don't think that actually during the morning, and you gave a speech. And you had to be tested by there was some supervisor of education came and asked a question. I remember the question he asked, I think, was what happens if Yom Kippur falls on Rosh Chodesh or something like that? Or Purim falls on Rosh Chodesh.
What's the answer?
Does anybody know the answer?
I'm sorry?
What do you think Purim falls on Rosh Chodesh?
If what falls?
Purim falls on Rosh Chodesh. How do you what
How's
do you
that possible?
It's a true question.
Huh?
How is that
Yeah,
possible?
it's not possible.
Exactly.
It's a true question.
That's like a David question.
Great. Okay, thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Bar or bat mitzvah? No.
My uncle came and made a speech on Shabbos.
Made a speech on Shabbos. Okay. Where did you grow up?
Party in Bedsmith.
Okay. Great.
No bat mitzvahs in my day.
No. Then none of your friends?
No.
No one. Bat mitzvah was just not a thing. Right?
Bat mitzvah.
Right.
No, never heard of it.
Right. Never heard of
No.
it. It wasn't me. You on your 12th birthday. It was acknowledged.
That was
That was
Okay.
But like my daughter had a bat mitzvah.
Right.
But it
Okay.
was an Orthodox shul, and she didn't do anything. She went to yeshiva, but
No, they didn't do
we
it.
Wait.
made it hard.
Okay.
That was why.
Right.
I
Okay.
had, my daughter went to Hafter, and Rabbi Roth was the rabbi. And it was the hardest one for me. The boys did, the traditional bar mitzvah, but my boys didn't learn. They led musaf.
Okay.
That's what my husband, my father-in-law wanted. He was in charge of that. My first husband had died. And, but for my daughter, I wrote the program. Rabbi Roth wouldn't let me call it a service. It was a program on Sunday morning, and she learned the Haftorah. And she gave a speech, and we did prayers, and we had Rabbi Pastor Cohen sang, and we had communal singing, and it was very hard because I had to do all the work.
Wow.
The boys were very easy because it was all, but it was the most rewarding.
And wow.
And
very
then we had
fascinating.
a party downstairs with a band. And
There was a party. Okay.
oh yeah,
Great.
definitely. I told my daughter, because all of her friends from Hafter were just having parties, and I said, if you want it, you have to work for it.
How long ago was that?
Well, she's 46,
Okay.
and it was when she was 12, so you didn't know.
All right, so 33. Okay, okay, very nice. So it's fascinating just how nowadays having a bat mitzvah is a bat mitzvah party, I should say. Everyone has a bat mitzvah. Everyone has a bar mitzvah. You become 12 and 13, but having the party, the way we celebrate it, has definitely come a long way. There's been a big development in terms of the celebration. So we'll get to that. There's some of the things to think about bar and bar mitzvah is we generally associate the age 12 and 13 years old as the time you become a man, the time you become a woman. And 12 and 13 seems, if you look at your average teenager, they don't necessarily seem to be the most mature, probably not making the best decisions. So what is the source for this year, for 12 and 13 being the year for becoming a man and a woman, and what is the significance of that age, and then hopefully what we'll get to is the source for the celebration, how to celebrate, and we'll hopefully get to some of the halachic aspects of the bar and bat mitzvah as well, but there's a lot to cover, so we'll start right over here. Okay, so if you look at your first source. So the first source is taken from the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot. This is somewhat of a well-known Mishnah. The Mishnah goes through at the different milestones at each age what Chazal saw was appropriate for children, and then as one goes through life, what someone should be up to, what someone acquires. So just to go through the beginning. So Hu Haya Omer Ben Chamesh Shanim Lemikra. So at 5 years old, that is when someone should be studying Mikra, which is referring to Chumash, studying the Torah. Ben Esther leMishnah. By 10 years old, one should be studying Mishnah, and then Ben Shlosh Esrei leMitzvah. So this is our first hint to this idea of 13 years old being a bar mitzvah. Someone that is when you are obligated in performing the commandments. That's when you are performing the mitzvot. Up until then, were you obligated? Were you not obligated? So there is this idea of chinuch that parents have an obligation to train you can't expect if a 13-year-old child, a 12-year-old girl has no background whatsoever, so it's kind of difficult to expect them to know what to do, to know that they should perform mitzvot or how to perform mitzvot. So we do have this idea, really a parent's obligation to train a child so that when they do become of age, when they do become 12 and 13 years old, they know how to perform, they know what to do. But a child becomes responsible for his own actions at that age, at 13 years old. And then the Mishnah continues going through all the different ages. You go through at 20, what you should be up to, at 40, 50, 60. It's very interesting. There's
I love the one about 100.
100, yeah. So a little depressing for for those streaming in. So we can read the Mishnah. So 15 is when you study Talmud. 18 ben shmona esrei lechuppah. That's why you're supposed to get married at 18. Also a little young. We don't really follow that one nowadays. Maybe some people do. Ben shloshim lekoach. The 30, that's when you have koach, that's when you have power. Ben ra'im lebina, that you gain a certain sense of bina, a certain sense of wisdom. Ben chamishim le'itzah, that's when you're at 50 years old, you're able to give some advice. Ben shishim lezikna, zikna is also you have enough life experience. You have that zikna, you have that wisdom. Ben shiv'im leseva, also another form of wisdom that you gain when you are at the time that you are 7 years old. Ben shmonim legvura. That is when you have gevura. There's a funny story told about someone who went to his rebbe, and he said he was very weak. He was about to turn 80, and he was sick. He said, like, "What am I supposed to do? I'm turning 80," and the Mishnah says, "Ben shmonim legvura." So where's my gvura? So the Rebbe told him, he said, "You didn't reach seva at 70. Why do you think you're going to reach gvura at 80?" Okay. So the different milestones throughout life. This gets to what we'll get to in a future shir about the wisdom of those who are older and wiser than us. So
What is a hoary head?
70 is the age of a hoary head.
Yeah.
70.
What is a hoary
Ben
head?
Shiv'im le Seva. Where is it?
Google it.
This is
white hair.
White hair.
So it's white hair. So South said no. It's but it's an analogy, as the rabbi says, for a certain type of wisdom.
right, the long white
If you want to be,
yeah. Okay, so that is that. But this is the reason for this Mishnah. That was just a tangent. The reason to bring this Mishnah was this. A Mishnah is this is where we turn to this is our first source where we find the idea of ben shlosha esrei le mitzvot. So, but the truth is, it seems that this came really from the Torah. The idea that at 13 years old, someone becomes an ish. Where is this from? So there's actually a dispute amongst the different Rishonim how we know that 13 years old is the age. So it could be from the story of Shimon and Levi, who went to attack the city of Shechem after their sister Dinah was captured. She was raped, and they wanted to take revenge on the Shechemites. So if you look at the psukim there, so it calls them an ish. This source number 2, Shimon v'Levi achei Dinah ish charbo. So the two brothers each took ish charbo. So the word ish there seems a little redundant. It didn't need to say the word ish. It could have just said they took charbo. They took their sword. So what Rashi learns from there is that they were 13 years old, and this is when they are called an ish. Okay, so that is one source that we have in the Torah. 13 years old, you become an ish, a full-fledged ish. That is when you are obligated in mitzvah. Then it's when you are able to perform all these different things. We'll get to what it means, the capabilities that a 13-year-old has. So that is number one idea of where this might come from. And number 2 is just simply that we have this idea of halacha l'Moshe miSinai, that we don't necessarily need to find a source in the Torah for something. It's just that this is the tradition that Moshe received from HaKadosh Baruch Hu at Har Sinai, and this has been passed on from Moshe to Yehoshua, to the Canaan, to Anshe Knesset Agdola, and so on until today. So we have a tradition. This is a tradition that 12 and 13 years old is the golden year. Is that year that you become obligated in mitzvah. Yes.
Why are girls 12, not 13?
Excellent question. We'll get there. Okay. So what is it? So what is it about this age? Again, so we're asking a lot of this child. If you just to understand what it means to be we have a mitzvah to be a believer, to believe in God, and you're expecting like these are questions that philosophers have a difficult time dealing with, and you're asking a 13-year-old to believe in God, and a 13-year-old has the capability of making nidarim, creating hekdesh, consecrating things to the Beit Hamikdash, that his words carry so much weight, and already he's able to become a sofer. He's able to create halachic statuses. He's able to get married technically at 13 if he does kiddushin with a with a woman. The kiddushin would take effect, and already at 13 years old. So what is it? Why is 13, 12, and 13? Why is that the age? What is happening then? So we'll continue into source number 4. So this actually goes back to Avraham Avinu, Avraham and Yitzchak. This is another source for a bar mitzvah in the Torah. So if you look at source number 4, this is talking about Yitzchak. Vayigal hayeled vayigamal. This time Yitzchak grew up vayigamal. What does it mean that he was weaned? So the simple understanding of that is that he was weaned from his mother's milk. He was no longer breastfeeding. But Avraham made a big party after Yitzchak was weaned. The Yom Higamel at Yitzchak. On the day that he was weaned, Avraham made a big party. So what is this referring to? So the Midrash actually comments on this pasuk and it says in source number 5. Anyone want to volunteer to read the next source?
She will.
Okay.
Grew and was weaned. Rabbi Hoshaya the Great said he was weaned from his evil inclination, and the rabbis say he was weaned from his milk.
So we have 2 interpretations. The simple explanation is what the Chachamim say. Rabbanan Amri Nigmal Mechalvo, that he was 3 years old. He no longer fed from his mother. But another understanding of the Midrash is that he was weaned from his Yetzer Hara. And when is that? That is when he was 13 years old. So at 13 years old is the time when we become
Puberty.
okay. So we'll get there in a second. So how does that relate to being weaned from your Yetzer Hara? This is when we see that a boy or a girl receives their Yetzer Hatov. Until then, just thinking about a child growing up. Until then, a child growing up is very self-centered. It's normal for a child to be thinking about themselves. And it seems that at 13 years old, so something spiritually is happening to the person, to the boy or the girl, and he receives that Yetzer Hatov, the ability to make good decisions, the ability to take different perspectives other than his own, other than being focused on the me, and that is the big party perhaps that Abraham had made for Yitzchak Avinu when he was weaned from his Yetzer Hara, no longer thinking about himself and being able to give thought to others. Okay. So it looks like the pages are a little out of order. So page 2 is actually on the back of page 3. So we'll go to page number 2. So here is another source discussing how the age 12 or 13 is when a person receives their Yetzer Hatov, and this is based off a pasuk in Kohelet. Kohelet was written by Shlomo HaMelech, right? Written by Shlomo HaMelech. Elliot Rose. Why 13 as opposed to 14, 15? Okay, hopefully we'll answer your question, Elliot. Thank you for your question. If you're not satisfied, we'll discuss privately. So it seems, just to answer Elliot's question, it seems that something happens at 13 years old. 13 is when a person receives their Yetzer Hatov, and we'll get there other things that are happening then, as Phyllis mentioned. That is the time boys and girls are going through puberty. That is when their body is taking on a physical maturity, and as many assume, the physical world often corresponds to what is going on in the spiritual world. So once something's going on in the physical, so someone is becoming physically mature, so happening in the spiritual realm as well. Yes.
I don't agree with this. It says the evil inclination enters at birth. Children are pure at birth. They have, from the Sound of Music. It's true, the song, not the South Pacific, rather. You have to be taught to hate and fear. Young children don't have an evil inclination.
So I think we have to understand what does Yetzer Hara mean? What does evil inclination mean? I think this goes back to what we were saying before. Let's read this first, and then we'll get back to your question. Thank you for your question. I think it has to do with being self-centered, meaning we know that children are naturally thinking about themselves. So it's the ability to think about others and do for others. I think that's the idea. It's less about hatred. I think we might associate Yetzer Hara with hatred, which I don't think that's what it is. I think it's being able to focus on something beyond the self. And that's true psychologically. I mean, right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a cognitive development
Right.
and thought before action, right? As you get older, hopefully.
Right. Okay. So this is based on a pasuk in Kohelet. So the pasuk says, "Tov yeled miskein, Tov yeled miskein v'chacham, mimelech zakein ukesil." What does that mean? Could someone read the translation of that pasuk? Of that verse? Anyone?
Better is a poor and wise child than an old and foolish king.
Better is a poor and wise child than an old and foolish king. So Kohelet is very esoteric. A lot of things are difficult to understand. So what is this referring to? What does it mean to have a poor and wise child? So the Chachamim in the Midrash weigh in on this. So what does the Midrash say? So can you continue?
Okay, better is a poor and wise child, i.e., that is to say, the good inclination. Why is it called a child? Because it attaches itself to man only from the age of 13 years and onward.
So this is the Yetzer HaTov. The Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination, enters a man from age 13 and onward. So why is it poor?
Because all do not obey it. Yeah.
It's poor because nobody listens to it.
Yeah.
It's a poor little thing. Yeah. Okay. Go on.
And why is it called wise? Because it teaches human beings the right way.
Okay, so this is another source for the Yetzer HaTov. So what is this? This is the inclination to do good. I think again also to see beyond the self, and that is something that one achieves at age 13. And then what is we can continue. What is the foolish king, the old and foolish king?
It's the evil inclination. Why is it called a king? Because all obey it. Why does it call it old? Because it attaches itself to man from youth to old age. And why is it called foolish? Because it teaches man the way of evil.
So we have this old and foolish king, the thing that people tend to listen to. It's difficult. A child grows up thinking about himself, and very often we find that people are unable to, even past 13 years old, people have a difficult time getting past the focus on themselves. So that is the old and foolish king, the thing that people listen to. So it's natural. This is natural human development. But what enters a person at age 13, as we had said, is this Yetzer HaTov, that ability to see beyond yourself. Okay. So that is the first idea, something actually entering the soul, something becoming part of the person. There are other sources which say, I didn't bring them here, that this is when the neshama, we spoke about the neshama entering the body, but this is when the neshama is fully highlighted, meaning what good is a neshama if you only have the Yetzer Hara? A neshama is the ability to choose between good and bad. So this is when we have both of the sides to listen to, and this is when the neshama is highlighted. This is when it is at full force. So that is what is happening at 13 years old. As we said, so this is also the age of physical maturity, which perhaps explains the difference between boys and girls. And this is actually said by the Torah Tamima. The Torah Tamima was one of the commentaries on the Chumash, on the Torah. So he has a very fascinating Perush throughout. He often brings in the different Ma'amarei Chazal, different Midrashim and Gemarot, and how to explain different Psukim. But here he says, Would you like to read the Torah Tanima? Yeah. This is for you.
Right. A girl becomes bat mitzvah at 12, whereas the boy becomes bar mitzvah at 13. Because the body's physical development goes in tandem with emotional and spiritual maturity. And because girls develop earlier physically, their emotional and spiritual maturity is earlier too.
So it seems to be that this is purely a developmental concept, that girls develop, they mature quicker than boys, both emotionally and physically and spiritually. So girls will develop that spiritual connection earlier than boys will, and that is why we have the difference between boys and girls.
When was that written?
The Torah Tanima. I'm not sure when it was written.
But I mean, like Middle Ages or?
Let's look it up. Torah Tanima. Probably a little after. Torah Tanima, 1902.
Oh,
Well,
pretty
Recent.
Yeah. Baruch Epstein.
relatively.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is totally random, and going back to the age of 13, does Yishmael having his bris at 13 have anything to do with that 13?
Right. So that happens. I think that, I mean, not that there are coincidences, but that's, I think, if I remember correctly, that's just when Abraham was given the commandment of Bris Milah. So that's a pure
Is there
coincidence.
something
So it could be. I don't know. That's an interesting question. But the mitzvah that was given to Abraham was, okay, you have to do your Bris Milah now, you and all your whole family and anyone in your house. So Yishmael was the only one around then. So and he was 13 years old at the time. But then once Yitzchak came along, so he had to do it at 8 days. So I don't. That's an interesting question. I don't know. Certainly, the Muslims believe that there is something significant. There's also something significant.
They do circumcision.
Right. Many of them do. Yeah. The frum Muslims will do it at 13. Many do not. It's interesting that there are many streams of Islam as well. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know. We'll have to look at it. Thank you. Okay, so along with the physical maturity is something else significant, and the next source is taken from Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe. Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe was actually had a background in psychology, and then have you heard of him?
And the name's familiar, but
So he became a mashgiach in I don't remember which yeshiva he was in, but he was one of the big spiritual leaders. He got to guide the yeshiva students in his in Yerushalayim. So he has very significant works that are studied by many yeshiva students. I had the opportunity to go through some of his works. So he says something very interesting. In addition to just becoming physically mature, there's something that comes along with that. And what is that? Does anyone read our next source? Phyllis?
Every person needs to know that from the moment that his reproductive organs begin to develop, he is no longer living in a personal, private state of existence. These physical processes enable him and her to be a parent to children.
He's talking to the boys, but this applies equally to the females. Yes.
A progenitor of a new generation. The life that he received from three partners, his father, mother, and creator, he is now commanded to pass on to the next generation, together with his two parents, the spouse that God will send him, and the divine spirit that will reside between them. Preparation for the great responsibility of parenthood must begin from the initial moments of sexual maturation. The young person must even then understand you will be a parent to children.
So there's something significant happening in the body, which is also a significant step of what the bar mitzvah boy is being charged with. He now has the ability to reproduce. The female also, becoming physically mature, has the ability to reproduce, and so it is specifically from that moment, he says, that you are being charged with. How are you going to pass this on to the next generation? How are you going to live a life of mitzvot so that you ensure the continuity of the Jewish people? So that is why that this age specifically is so important. Is the day is on that day specifically. We had to quantify it to a day, or is it a day? We'll get back to that. But there's what's happening physically is that one becomes physically capable of procreating, and that is why that day, that moment is so important, so crucial in the spiritual world as well. Okay, so just to understand this idea, so we call a bar mitzvah a bat mitzvah. So how do you translate the word bar mitzvah? Bar is this a son, right? A son of a mitzvah, son of the mitzvah, or a bat. You are now a daughter of the commandment. So what is the significance of this bar being a bar and a bat, as opposed to the next source will draw a comparison to a different way of referring to people, such as a Baal Avera. If someone who is known to do not such great things, they're called they're not called a bar Avera, they're not called a bat Avera, they're called a Baal. What is a Baal? A Baal is an owner, someone who acquires. You are the Baal of this. You're the Baal Habayit. You're the owner of this house. So why, when referring to a Baal Avera, do we use the term referring to ownership as opposed to mitzvot, where we refer to being a son of mitzvot? So, would anyone like to read our next source? Anyone? So, yeah, you can take it.
Okay, understanding the bar in bar mitzvah. By Yoshafat Alpet, Niglot v'nistarot b'yahadut. Okay, the expression.
You just read the.
Okay, the obligation of mitzvot is automatic and begins from the moment the sun sets on the day that a child becomes bar mitzvah, without the need of any agreement or consent on his part. Therefore, we attach the term son, Baal, to a bar mitzvah boy, whereas a transgressor is named Baal Avira, meaning the owner of a sin. The conceptual difference between the terms son and owner are clear and significant. A son is a son by virtue of his birth and will never cease to be a son. He might become distant or even estranged, yet he will forever remain part of the family. So too is the status of each Jew. A status hinted in the words bar mitzvah, the son of a mitzvah. Of each Jew it is written, you are children of the Lord your God. Each Jew, even the most estranged from a Torah lifestyle, remains a Jew. Even if he transgresses, he is still called a Jew.
So we'll stop there. So what he's saying is that you once a son, you're always a son, and no matter how far you go, no matter what you do, a parent will always love their child. It's something that happens automatically, it's something that we have no control over. So that is the idea of being a bar or a bat. It's something that stays with us forever, no matter who you are. You're Jewish, you become a bar mitzvah. There's nothing you can do about it. As opposed to this idea of ownership being a Baal Avira. He'll continue, and he says that ownership comes and go. You could own a house one day, you could sell it the next day. You could own a car one day, you could sell it the next. So yes, you may do an Avira, you may do something wrong, but it's not your essence. It's not who you are. So the idea is that yes, you may have had ownership of that Avira on one day, but you learn from your mistake. You go on. You become better. As opposed to the bar mitzvah is really describing the essence of a Jew. This is something. This is who we are, no matter how far we may go, and it's just an important perspective on all Jews. No matter where they may be, all Jews are this bar or bat mitzvah, and always have the ability to come back to this idea of mitzvah. So that's just the idea, understanding the importance of being a bar mitzvah. Okay, so now that we understand a little bit more about the age, why the age is important, and what it means to be a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, so why the party?
Yeah, because based on what it says, it's like you don't need a party. You don't even need to be called up to the Torah, right?
Right.
Like,
so something happens. There's nothing to do about it. Just like the bat mitzvahs in the days of old. So it used to be that there was nothing happened. So why the need to party? So there are interesting stories. So first of all, we saw Avraham, right? So Avraham is our first source for that idea. So if we assume that that was talking about Yitzchak's bar mitzvah, so Avraham made a party. So too, we will make a party on that day. Okay, we'll skip the next source. We'll skip to source number 11. So this is a quote from Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef was one of the Amoraim who was blind. And does anyone know what is the halachic status of someone who cannot see? Are they too obligated in mitzvot?
Probably not.
So they are. They are.
They
You
are.
are?
Yes. Blind people are obligated in the commandments that they are able to perform. Then they are obligated to perform.
I thought
Yes.
they had the same status as a woman.
No. So there is this idea of what you're probably thinking of is a cheresh shotev v'katan, someone who is a deaf mute, or someone who is not all mentally there, not doesn't have all his mental capabilities, or someone who is katan, someone who's not yet 12 or 13 years old. So even nowadays, I mean, so there are people in that category, but a blind person is obligated to keep the mitzvot. So Rav Yosef was an Amora who was blind, and so this is an interesting exchange that he had. So he says, at first, I would say, if someone would tell me that the halacha is accordance with Rabbi Yehuda, what is Rabbi Yehuda thought that a blind person is exempt from fulfilling mitzvah? That's what Rabbi Yehuda said, but we don't paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. So he said, I would have made a festive day for the rabbis, as I am not commanded, and yet I perform the mitzvot. Here we have Rabbi Yosef, who is this great Amora. He obviously performs a lot of mitzvot, and he's very proud of himself that, according to Rabbi Yehuda, who thinks blind people are not obligated in mitzvot, he still performs all the mitzvot. What a great thing. But then what does he say? Now that I have heard that which Rabbi Chanina says, what does Rabbi Chanina say? Greater is one who is commanded to do a mitzvah and performs it than one who is not commanded to do a mitzvah and performs it. On the contrary, if someone would tell me that the halacha is not in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda and a blind person is obligated in mitzvot, I would make a festive day for the rabbis. What does he mean? Sorry, that was a little, and that may have been difficult to understand. What he's saying is that if someone were to tell me that really I am obligated in the mitzvot and I am doing the mitzvot that I am obligated in, we have this idea that Gadol HaMitzvah said it's greater to be commanded to have a command from the king and to perform that mitzvah than to not have been commanded at all and to do something that you're doing it but you weren't commanded to do it, so it's not that great. It's even greater to have the commandment from the one above and to perform that mitzvah. So this is what he's saying. He's saying I'm being told that I am obligated in mitzvot, and I have been performing the mitzvot as a blind person. What a great thing that is, that I'm commanded to do them, and I have the ability to perform all these mitzvot. So what we take from Rav Yosef is this idea. He said he was going to make a big party just by hearing that he was obligated in the mitzvot, just by hearing that he is now a bar mitzvah. So this is the idea. So if Rav Yosef, who found out much later in life that he was obligated in mitzvot and was going to make this big Yom Tov for the Rabbanan, he was going to make this big party, all the more so someone who is 12 or 13 years old, who finds out that they are now obligated to perform the mitzvot, they should make a big party, just like Rav Yosef did. I'm sorry if that was not clear for anyone. So there is this concept of hearing that you are obligated to perform the commandments of God, that being a great day. And so Rav Yosef made a party, so too a 13-year-old should make a party.
Logically, one would think that if you are not commanded, you would be getting a greater reward if you were doing it. Because if you're commanded, okay, I'm commanded, I got to do it. But it's so illogical.
Right.
Because
so we have this idea.
You would think that you would get a greater reward if if I got up at 6:30 and came to church and to 7 every day, I get a higher elevation.
Right. So we have this idea of
We look forward to it.
I only come when I have a year.
so we have this idea of Gadol HaMitzuveh ve'otzeh, that greater is the one who is commanded and performs the mitzvah. Why is that? Because it seems that what is the purpose of mitzvot? The purpose of mitzvot, we touched on this when we discussed bris milah. The purpose of mitzvot is to draw someone closer to God, is to create a connection. And so once God is reaching his hand out and says, this is what I would like for you to do to me, and you are taking his hand and doing that for God. So that is so much greater than someone who was not necessarily obligated to do it. God didn't reach his hand out to him. God didn't command you to do that. So then you're doing it. It's nice, but it's not on the same level as someone who is it's not on the same level as someone who is commanded to do it. Another interesting idea of how to explain that of why is it better to be commanded to do something than to not be commanded. Tosfot actually says on that Gemara that says this. So Tosfot says because that once you're commanded to do something, so then you automatically have a Yetzer Hara not to do it. You automatically are thinking, should I do it? Should I not do it? If you're not commanded and you do it, so you're volunteering and that's great. But once you're commanded to do it, you have that Yetzer Hara, and you may think about not doing it, and you have to overcome the Yetzer Hara to do it. So that is much greater than someone who did not have to overcome any Yetzer Hara at all. So that's just a side point. Okay. So the next source I would like to see is a letter that Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach wrote to his granddaughter. And in this, he discusses the significance of this day. Would anyone like to read Rav Shlomo Zalman?
Sure.
No? Great.
On the day a boy or girl becomes bar or bat mitzvah, they need to feel and see that the day like the holiday of Shavuot, on which day the Torah was given to the Jewish people, the day in which the Katan becomes the Gadol and merits to be commanded in mitzvot like the rest of the Jewish people. For him it is like the day of the giving of the Torah. This is also the day one is considered a bar dat. Therefore, one should rejoice on this day.
So what is he saying? The day that you become commanded in mitzvot is your day of Matan Torah. This is the day that you receive the Torah. This is your Shavuot. So that is the reason for the celebration. The day one receives this level of da'at, the level of da'at that is needed to create halachic statuses, to create kiddushin, to write halachic documents, to perform mitzvot, to be motzi, to read from the Torah, and to allow everyone else to fulfill their obligation, to read the Megillah, to blow shofar. So there's a certain level of knowledge, of maturity that one needs, and that is the day that you achieve that, and so that is the reason for the great celebration. Interestingly, if we compare this day to Shavuot, the day of a personal day of Matan Torah, receiving the Torah, we can understand something nice I happened to have seen last night. Why there's no real mention of this bar mitzvah in the Torah. There's no mitzvah. Oh, when you become 13, you should. This is what you have to do. And there's also no mention of Matan Torah, of when the day of Matan Torah is in the Torah. The Torah says, we know Tisperu Chamishim Yom. We have this idea of Surat HaOmer after Pesach, but we don't know when the Torah was given. And the idea, it seems, is one and the same. That's okay. Enjoy. The idea, it's getting exciting. This is the Matan Torah. This is going to be next week. We'll see how we're going to discuss the customs of the wedding, how much of a wedding is parallel to Matan Torah and Har Sinai. So the noises. Okay. Anyways, so the idea is, why is there no mention of the day the Torah was given in the Torah? So the idea is that the excitement that the Jews experienced on that day, whatever day it was, it doesn't matter what day it was. The excitement should last with you forever. And so too, the idea of not having this day of Bar Mitzvah in the Torah is that B'chol Yom Yihu Beinecha Kechadashim. Every day you should be as excited to perform the mitzvot as if that was your first day. And this is something that we should carry on with us even after our bat and bat mitzvahs. And that is why there is no mention, perhaps why there is no mention of this day in the Torah, because it should not be bound to that day. It is something that you should take on with you for forever. Okay. So that is a little bit about bar and bat mitzvah. And some of the halachic aspects of what is customary to do for the bar mitzvah. So we have this idea of the bar mitzvah boy getting an aliyah or reading from the Torah. It seems that the reading from the Torah is somewhat of a more modern development. It's not something that was always done to read the whole parsha. Interestingly, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, this was the minhag. He was the Rav in Shari Chesed in Yerushalayim, and he wanted to obliterate this minhag for the bar mitzvah boy to read the entire parsha of the Torah.
You wanted to obliterate?
He wanted to obliterate it. Why? Why did he want to do that? Because he said he did two things. He said, number one, children should be focused on their Torah study. This is taking away. There's too much pressure to learn a whole parsha. They should be focused on their schoolwork. They should be focused on their learning. So that's number one. And he said, number two, children tend to learn their parsha so well that they get up to the Torah that they're not even reading it. They're reading it by heart. They're not. You're supposed to read the words from the Torah. So he thought that it was not a good idea for a bar mitzvah boy to read the entire parsha. It's just an interesting story. So that's what he thought, but he didn't express that thought to his community because he was afraid that people were going to assume he would, if he got up and announced we're no longer reading from the Torah, people would assume that he was talking about one specific bar mitzvah boy who he didn't want to read from the Torah. So he didn't want anyone to take it the wrong way. So he waited until one of his students, who everyone knew was the great student, and his son had been leading the Torah even before he was bar mitzvah. Everyone knew that he did it really well. And when he became bar mitzvah, he told him, "You're not going to lay the parsha, the whole parsha this week. You're only going to get your maftir, whatever maftir and Torah." That's what he did. But this has become the minhag. But when people often feel pressured to have the bar mitzvah boy learn the whole parsha, but it's definitely not necessary. It's a nice thing, but it often might take away depending on
the idea of him doing the whole parsha.
I'm not sure. I haven't seen. I'll have to do some.
Yeah, I know in South Africa it was, and South Africa were mainly Lithuanian Jews. Nobody read the
right.
parsha.
So Rav Shlomo Zalman. So what I saw quoted, he thought that it came from America. This is an American custom. But others disagree. They say that this is what they did in Europe. So I'm not sure.
When my son Seth, who's 49, I'm very young. It must have started around then. Some kids did it because we did not have him do it. As I said, we had him daven,
Right.
the whole musaf.
But it was an option of him.
But right, especially because he went to Haftar, so some kids obviously were doing it, but we thought that was more meaningful.
Right. Very beautiful. Very nice. Yeah. So different people do different things. Different customs have arisen. But just the idea of, so number one, so the truth is that this is not all dependent on the birthday, on that day that one becomes 13 years old. There's actually a discussion of, does it need to be 13 full years? Do you count 13 to the minute, 13 years to the minute that you were born? If I was born at 12:26 a.m., but I only become bar mitzvah at 12:26 a.m. on the night of bar mitzvah, or no, once the sun sets on the day I become 13, that is when I become bar mitzvah. So there is a discussion in the Rishonim when that kicks in. We assume that it happens on that day. So that the halachic day, that night that you become bar mitzvah, even if you were born later on in the day, that is when you become 13 years old. That is when you become obligated in mitzvah. The truth is that it is not only dependent on the years. We have this idea of we need both shanim and simanim. Simanim are signs. So the day one begins to show signs of physical maturity, the way Chazal write about it is having two hairs, or we know if a child begins to grow facial hair. So that is really when it becomes a bar mitzvah. So we we narrow it down to 13, and we'll let a child who is 13. We're not going to embarrass a child and check. So we'll let a child who is 13 years old daven. We'll let a child do certain things, but there are things that we will not. If someone is just 13 years old, we won't let him blow the shofar because that is a mitzvah from the Torah. We won't let him lane. Most of the time, we'll let him lane. We won't let him lane Parshat Zachor, which we assume is a mitzvah from the Torah, because he may not have those simanim. He may not be fully a bar mitzvah. So we need these shanim and simanim in order to both years and physical signs of maturity. So that is number one. What else? So this idea of bat mitzvah. So bat mitzvah. So obviously there is a change in the status of the girl, but the celebration it took a long time for that to come. Our mitzvahs have been celebrated for a much longer time, and bat mitzvah celebrations are much more recent. And the reason for that, or I don't know what, the reason for that is just the way, the role
Rabbi
of
Kaplan's
right.
daughters started it.
Right. So she was the first bat mitzvah. Right.
I'd like to share what my granddaughter Emma did. She's 14 now, and she goes to Heschel. They go to the Jewish Center, and they had a women's tefillah. And Adina Berkowitz, if you know who she is, she's very active in Jewish women's life. She led the service, and she actually read. She read from the Torah. My granddaughter did a lot of it. Part of it. She read half of it, and it was very exciting. But I've had aliyahs, in a conservative synagogue, and you do the bracha. But when I went up for the aliyah, I had the first one. I started to do the bracha, and Dina said, "No, you don't do the bracha because whatever you did." So it was, but it was wonderful. And only 9 men were allowed in the room.
Really?
Why? Because 10 men, you have a minyan, and then it wouldn't be a women's tefillah.
Interesting, very interesting.
And they rented their own room at the Jewish Center.
Very nice.
Was that the Jewish Center?
At the Jewish Center. Yeah, my kids are very active there.
Very
But
interesting.
that's
Orthodox.
No,
Orthodox.
Jewish
It's like
Center.
our shul.
Really?
Yeah.
But the school Heschel is
Heschel is a community day school, right?
but Orthodox.
No, this is non-denominational.
It's non-denominational.
That's where Rosalie and Abram's
Yes,
grandchildren go to.
yes.
Also, it's non-denominational. That's interesting.
So it's a women's service, really. I mean,
Yeah, it's a women's service.
Very
And then they walked in and out and,
yeah.
tried to sneak in.
Fascinating. Right. So as you mentioned, so Rabbi Kaplan's daughter was the first one to have a bat mitzvah in America. That was in the 1920s, right? So that was the first bat mitzvah. So there was a very strong reaction to that as being from the Orthodox end that this is not anything that had been done. So there were many who were opposed to this idea of celebrating the mitzvah. So if you look, even for Moshe Feinstein, so he has responsa, right, discussing this idea of should there be a bat mitzvah celebration. So it seemed what the thought was, they thought that this was copying this idea of confirmation from the Christians. So they didn't want to be copying that. And once there was this movement in conservative Judaism, so the Orthodox wanted to keep things avoid the change. So that's why there was a very strong reaction in the opposite direction. However, even the Orthodox community has embraced this idea of bat mitzvah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Some of the girls do like Friday night.
Right. So they're different.
Why Alexis is gonna have a bat mitzvah.
Did you go to Hebrew school?
No.
Oh, okay. I went to Yiddish school. I didn't go to
No.
Hebrew school either.
I went,
But my sister-
Yiddish something. I don't even.
My sister went to Flatbush Jewish Center, and she was confirmed. My sister's 5 years older than I. She did not have a bat mitzvah, but at 14 on Shavuot, they were confirmed.
Right. Okay. So that's the idea.
Conservative.
Right. So this idea of bat mitzvah really a conservative thing. Even the Reform Jews, so they had more of a confirmation later on. So they didn't have the mitzvah. They didn't. I guess slowly they adopted it, but they didn't have this either. So it was really a conservative idea. And then slowly it started in New York. It was Rabbi Ritzkin, and there's a whole article of how bat mitzvah became Orthodox. I could check.
That's interesting.
So it's a very interesting article.
Where is the article?
It's online. I can send it to you.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Email me after.
That'd be cool.
I'll be happy to send it to you. So it goes through the whole history. This is very, very fascinating. So it was in the Jewish Center and in KJ. They were the first one. It was Rabbi Lamb's daughter. She was one of the first bat mitzvahs. Sorry, Rabbi Luxin's daughter. I apologize. It was Rabbi Luxin's daughter who was one of the first to have her Orthodox bat mitzvah. There was a shalachudis in her honor. So it's very interesting. And so it's interesting how this has developed, even in the more Haredi community. So there is it seems that there is somewhat of a celebration. I don't know in the Hasidic communities. I don't know if they acknowledge it to that extent, but there is a celebration. They have a meal. They do something. They do something.
Now, when Rabbi Herring was rabbi, we started a women's adult bat mitzvah class. And we read a huge number of books, but we never took it to the bat mitzvah because we just wanted to keep on learning. So we just kept on reading and we never had the ceremony. But I know at Temple Hillel, which is conservative, they do that.
That's great.
Adult women's bat mitzvah.
That's great. That's great. So it seems that nowadays that it's an important thing to do. The Sri De Eish, Rabbi Chiel Yaakov Weinberg he wrote in 1963. He wrote in a Torah journal. So he was from Germany. He was a real Orthodox rabbi, and he felt that it was important. So there's a whole excerpt of why he thought it was important. He said times have changed, and we need to encourage our women to show this. It's an important milestone to mark. It's not in the pages. Also interesting, the Ovadia Yosef also he's also from the more Haredi camp, so he has a whole essay describing the importance of having a bat mitzvah for women, for girls, because times have changed, and this is what our generations need. So it seems that this has become the custom to celebrate both the bar and bat mitzvahs, as we have seen. A girl becomes obligated in mitzvot, and a boy becomes obligated in mitzvot, and there is much reason for celebration because of all the things that are happening. We should appreciate what is happening at that time at the bar mitzvah. Unfortunately, sometimes these things get lost in the bar, and they get lost in the party. It's easy to lose perspective. But next time we go to a bar mitzvah, we should appreciate that it is if there is Torah at the bar mitzvah, even though if it's not on the day it becomes bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, it is considered a seudat mitzvah. It is a mitzvah to participate in that meal because it is a significant day of someone accepting upon themselves the yoke of mitzvot and gaining that level of maturity to be a creator and a procreator in the Jewish people. That is a little bit about our bar and bat mitzvot. Just to answer, we had a question. A convert from Elliot Rose. A convert is bar or bar mitzvah no matter what the age. So the answer is a convert. If he converts past 13 years old, so yes. So he is
bar mitzvah.
He's bar mitzvah even, and there's a whole question of how a convert younger than 13 can convert. Is he mature enough to accept upon himself the yoke of mitzvot? So what we assume is, someone who is less than 13 can convert, and then he reaffirms his connection, his acceptance as to be a convert when he becomes 13 years old.
Even when a newborn is adopted?
Right, even when they would go and ask the newborn, tell them you were adopted, you were converted, do you wish to stay as a part of the Jewish people? That is what would happen to a convert, yes. Because someone who is young, they're not mature enough to make these life-altering decisions and to accept mitzvot upon themselves. So that's a little bit about mitzvot. Thank you everyone for streaming in. Thank you everyone for being here. And next week we will discuss a little bit about the Jewish wedding,
Right.
We're gonna have a mock wedding.
minhag and matrimony.